All right, Ocean.
Hi.
I haven't seen you in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute, yeah, for sure. So we are here today because it's Mental Health Awareness Month.
Yeah.
And that's a very important subject to me and obviously to you too. Yeah. So that's why I brought you in. And I want you to obviously, talk about yourself and tell your story and what's going on in this world.
Awesome. I mean, I've never done a podcast before, so we'll figure it out as we go.
Right on.
But yeah, you reached out to the network and said that you were looking for someone to come and talk about mental health. And I have been kind of getting into the advocacy space for chronic illness and invisible disabilities.
Oh, good.
And a big piece of that is mental health. And so I was like, I'm happy to come talk about it and kind of talk about my experience.
Yay, that's good.
See where it goes.
All right.
Yeah.
So tell me.
Okay, so I guess I'll give the context of how I ended up here.
Mm-hmm.
I know you from going to ACTI together.
Yes.
So when I met you, we were both starting businesses. A little bit after I left ACTI, I ended up having a car accident.
And I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Holy jeez.
So I'm like, there's a whole new...
oh my goodness.
Yeah, there's been lots going on the last few years.
Wow.
So I had a pretty bad car accident that ended up leaving me with a brain injury.
Oh my goodness.
Specifically post-concussion syndrome.
Oh no.
Yeah, so it's become, the last few years have been kind of a journey of, I think most people with chronic illnesses end up getting multiple. So post-concussion syndrome, which then turned into a slew of other diagnoses like dysautonomia and fibromyalgia. And so I got progressively sicker for a while, and that inevitably impacted my mental health.
Holy jeez. And well, when I met you at the Anderson Career Training Institute program, you already had some health issues.
Yeah, I had endometriosis, which I found out later was actually endosalpingiosis.
Oh my goodness. All these terms I'm not familiar with. Yeah.
Feel free to ask. I'm happy to explain, but I also know it's a large world of confusing terms.
Well, it's good to be educated, right?
Yeah. So endometriosis is the one most people know about.
Yeah.
Which is the lining of your uterus that grows on all women's uterus and is what you shed when you have your period. Grows just anywhere it feels like in the body. So it can grow on any of your organs, and it's quite a painful condition.
Yeah.
Endosalpingiosis is really rare. It's less known. My phone autocorrects me every time I try and type it. I swear this is a real word. And it's really similar to endometriosis, except the tissue that's growing all over your body is the cells that line your fallopian tube instead of the cells that line your uterus.
Right.
Super similar, slightly different. Anyway. So I had that previously, and I had IBS, which is why the company that I started and was running was an alcohol company geared towards people who wanted whole ingredients that weren't going to flare up. Yeah. Things like IBS or bloating or stomach issues.
Healthier stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I was already in that realm a little bit, but I had some I don't want to call them mild chronic illnesses because they're not, but I was still able to function. I was still working. Right. I was still day-to-day managing it. My health after the car accident has been quite different. I've actually been on medical leave for a year now.
Oh my god. So you haven't been working?
No. So I ended up having to close the company a few years in.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I couldn't manage the 60 hours a week of being an entrepreneur.
Right. We know that.
I was I ended up in 40 hours a week of medical appointments, and that became my full-time job. And so there was just no realm of balancing.
Yeah.
So that obviously hit hard, and I had to make the decision that my health had to take priority.
Right.
And so closed the company and focused on health. And then tried to still work a job part-time while dealing with the health stuff. And then about a year ago, my health got to a point where it just hit a wall where I was I can't keep working. So I had to stop.
And so let's talk about the mental health aspect of that.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness.
Frankly, brutal. I'll be very honest about, I'm at a stage now where I'm kind of going uphill and I'm getting out of that.
Yeah.
And I'm doing the work and getting better mentally for sure. But it was rough. I went through a few years of really intense depression and anxiety and I think one of the reasons I'm so passionate talking about it is because I know people look at physical health and mental health kind of separately and as their own things, especially Western medicine. We have this idea that they're two different worlds, and I'm they're not.
Yes. Exactly.
They're really not. So my physical health ended up massively impacting my mental health, and I went through major mental health struggles which then didn't help my physical health because then my physical health would get worse because so it's this like cycle.
Yeah.
And then like Western medical professionals really like to separate them. So they'd be like, well, you have anxiety. So like that must be the explanation for all your physical symptoms. I'm like, no, I have anxiety because my body is falling apart and I'm in pain.
Yes.
It's like a circle.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry you had to go through that. Jeez.
Yeah. I mean, it was rough, but I also like truly believe everything happens for a reason. Yeah. And I hope that I can advocate for people who will continue to go through that. Because like we have a lot of brain injuries in Canada. Yep. It's a big problem. And we have very little research and very little funding towards research, especially MTBIs, which is the type of brain injury I have.
Talk about that, MTBI.
Yeah, so in brain injuries, there's kind of this split between TBI and MTBI, which is traumatic brain injury and mild traumatic brain injury. The use of the word mild is very misleading. I hate that's how we classified it, but basically traumatic brain injury from my understanding, and like, again, I am not a doctor, but I have been a patient for many years, and I'm someone who really is into biology, so I've done quite a lot of research. For sure. A traumatic brain injury generally can be seen on a scan. So if you look at an MRI of the brain, you'll see some damage somewhere for a traumatic brain injury. That's right. A mild traumatic brain injury, you don't see it on a scan. Whatever the damage is, an MRI is not... it doesn't pick it up. It's not... Oh. Yeah, it's too small for... Like, MRIs aren't the be-all, end-all. They don't pick up everything. So a mild traumatic brain injury, whatever soft tissue damage has been done is too small to see on an MRI. But
that's okay. If they can't find it, then how do they know?
How do they diagnose it?
Yeah.
Symptomatically. So you do a bunch of testing, and they base on symptoms, and then they rule out anything else that could cause those symptoms. So my diagnosis is post-concussion syndrome. In order for me to have the way they kind of found out that I had it, obviously I had a car accident, which means that I would have done this and gone back and forth.
Yes, yeah.
People assume that brain injuries are caused from hitting something. Yeah. You don't actually have to hit anything. The thing that causes a brain injury is your brain sloshing back and forth in your skull. Right. So the movement of going back and forth, whether you hit something or not, can cause a brain injury. Right. So that paired with, I was having these symptoms all of a sudden of, like, the light really hurt my eyes. Like, I was like, why is the sunlight painful? Why is the light, like, I was like, everything hurts. I was, like, dizzy and nauseous. So I was having those kind of, I was getting headaches all of a sudden for the first time in my life, and I'd never had headaches. Wow. Fatigue. It's like, why am I exhausted? So, like, those, the combination of symptoms with the fact that I had an accident was how they kind of pieced it together, and they were like post-concussion syndrome. Wow. So that's how we got there.
Holy jeez.
So post-concussion syndrome is a type of MTBI where you're not going to see it on a scan, but it's there and it causes symptoms. Yeah. And we just really don't have funding for it and research into it. Like,
really?
Yeah.
Stuff I'm learning too.
Right. I know. They actually just passed a brain injury act in Canada to try and work on public awareness and funding for research, because it's such a big issue. There's so many of them and it's so unknown. So like, I had the issue of like, I was getting not great treatment because we don't have good research to support good treatment. So at least from my experience, like, we have this like set of regimes that like you generally go through when you have post-concussion. And for me, they did nothing but do more damage.
Really?
Yeah.
Explain that one to me. So yeah, give me examples.
And I'm sure everyone is different. And I think for some, there's this kind of, from what I know in the research, some people seem to get better from post-concussion syndrome within that first 2 years. Yeah. And then once you kind of hit the 3-year mark, there's no evidence of any patients getting better after the 3-year mark if you still have it. That doesn't mean that no one has, but in the clinical research, I couldn't find anything of somebody getting better after 3 years. So for some people, there's this regime of like, you do physiotherapy and you do cognitive therapy and vision therapy and all of these like things to try and rebuild these systems that have kind of broken down in your brain. And they're not fun. They're kind of like do the thing that hurts to build a tolerance to doing it. Same way you go to a gym and you're sore because you worked out. So it's like, let's trigger your light sensitivity and try and, or like trigger whatever's making your eyes hurt. But like, the idea is to do it so that it just mildly triggers it and you don't go over that threshold of like too much. Yeah. I don't know how great they are at actually hitting that window. So I know some people that say that it made some mild improvement for them. There's clinical research that says there's people that it helps and they get better. And then there's people like me where it did nothing but make me sicker. And I'm now on the uphill because I stopped. Because I
really?
Nope. Oh. And when I say uphill, I should be very clear that like I am still sick at this point permanently. Like I'm not getting physically drastically better. Yeah. But at my baseline, like my symptomatic day to day, instead of being at a 10 out of 10, I'm maybe at like a 6 out of 10. Okay. So like how I feel day to day is slightly better than how I was feeling when I was doing all the treatments. So like they definitely weren't helping me.
Oh my goodness. You must have been mentally like so frustrated.
Yeah, so mental torture. Yeah. Especially you're going to, so like that contributed to my mental health decline. Absolutely. Because I'm going to these treatments with these professionals where like I'm really sick and I don't know anything about this. And so I'm trusting these professionals who are telling me do these things. And every time, so like I go into physio and they're like, sit on the bike and do 10 minutes pedaling. Yeah. Every time I get on that bike, I feel sick to my stomach. Yeah. It makes me feel awful. Yeah. But in my head, I'm going, okay, but if I do this, then I'll get my life back. Right. That if I just keep doing the things I'm told, that I'll get better. Yeah. And everything will be okay. That's right. So I'm like torturing myself for the hope that I'll get better. Yeah. And then and I did that for 2.5 years. So like by the end of 2.5 years, like you go a little crazy. Yeah. Like, because I was like, but why am I not getting better? And they're like, well, just keep trying. No one had answers. No one really would give me, when I was like, well, what's the treatment plan? And they're like, well, let's just keep doing this for a few months and see what happens. Or like.
And 2.5 years later?
2.5 years later, still nothing. They were like, kind of, when I'd be like, well, when I'd really push it, they'd be like, we don't know. And I'd be like, okay. I don't love that answer, but okay.
2.5 years, if there's no improvement, usually you go on to something else. My goodness.
But that's where I think we literally just don't have the research that they don't know what else to do. So they keep doing the only thing they know how to do because, like, they really don't know. We don't have the research, right? Yeah. Like, we don't know a lot about the human body, and unless we have funding to do the research to figure it out, there's no other treatment options.
Wow, it's just bizarre in this day and age to think that with these so many health conditions, diseases or whatever, it's like not enough funding for, oh my gosh. I can't even.
There's a huge lack of funding.
Right, I can't even like grasp that concept. But anyways,
that was one of my big reasons to get into advocacy was I was like, the general public has no idea. Like before I was sick, I had no idea that these were problems. And you only get funding if the general public knows and cares about it, right? Like all the people with brain injuries can care, but unless people without brain injuries care, we won't get funding.
Well, then you need to be a part of my YEG Empowering You event to create that awareness. So
I know, I keep hearing
please come.
I absolutely will. I tried to come the last 2 years.
Yes, I remember that.
And then had scheduling conflicts.
Yes. So try to keep it open for sure. Oh my goodness. So, back to the mental health aspect, since we're talking, that's the main topic. Go into your feelings and the days that that you were drastically like.
So obviously I've talked a little bit about the medical system contributing to my mental health, but the social, so like kind of some of the pieces that really contributed to my mental health decline was like the social aspect as well. I'm really young, I'm in my 20s, and so like my friends are also in their 20s and 30s, and I lost a lot of mobility getting sick. So I had really high fatigue and couldn't function a ton and couldn't stand for hours.
Like your body was like a senior almost.
Not even almost. It was.
Oh my gosh.
I a few months ago went to a yoga class that was all seniors and got my butt kicked.
No way!
I've never been so humbled in my life.
Oh my goodness, Ocean.
I see most seniors. I have a handicap parking spot. Wow. So like every time I get out of my car, I see a senior just look at me.
Yeah, like
I'm like, what's wrong with you? I'm like,
the fountain of youth right here.
Yeah, I'm like, believe it or not, your body probably works better than mine. She's struggling. Yeah.
Wow.
So having that disconnect with my peers definitely added to the mental health struggles because my friends are going out and doing fun things.
Yeah, living life.
Like
the 20s should be.
Like bedbound and stuck on my couch. Like I can't get up and do stuff so that was was another big piece of feeling really isolated and depressed, and because I'm going through this really hard traumatic experience, and then I'm going through it alone.
Yes.
Which exponentially. So I mean, I'm at a point now where like I'm enough detached from it, and I've gotten to the other end. It's never like not gotten, but at least the other end of like really suffering. Yeah. So I can talk about it, and I talk about it because I think this is a really common experience for people who end up with chronic illness. Yeah. And people just don't know, and like we kind of isolate ourselves because like I know for me, I didn't want to be a burden. I felt really, I felt really uncomfortable being like, especially to people who just couldn't possibly conceive what was going on in my world. Yeah. So I was like, because I would have been like, in order to hang out with my friends, they would have had to adapt what they were doing.
And so, did you not feel that they could adapt? Like,
I think there's like a mix of like pride and ego.
Yeah, that's our natural reaction, I think. Yeah.
It was so uncomfortable for me. And I've always been, like, for me, I've always been a hyper independent person.
Right.
So yes. Like,
I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So like deeply uncomfortable to need help and need people to accommodate me. Yeah. And, like, it just felt like it wasn't fair to them somehow, which I realize is very skewed thinking.
Yeah, I know. And you know, when we talk about mental health, it's being comfortable to ask for that help, because then no one would know, right? Yeah. That's the key thing.
Exactly.
But yeah, I get where you're coming from.
So that's why I'm like, I talk about it now to be like, hey, like that friend you have that's like got a chronic illness and they're not really talking about it and they kind of make jokes about it. They're not okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Like they need your support. Yeah. And like on that, ask them about it. Like, yes. I think my friends, and I would have felt this way as an able-bodied person before, so I understand why they had this thought process, but I think they were really uncomfortable to ask me about it because they didn't want to say the wrong thing. Right,
yeah. So, working in the disability community, that's the key thing, is the choice of words, unfortunately.
They're so scared to say the wrong thing or ask about something that maybe they're worried I'm going to think is too personal and not want to share, and so they just avoid it.
Which is unfortunate because everyone usually generally has good intentions, right?
Yes, yeah. I'm like, none of it was a negative, right? But I think they were so scared to say or ask the wrong thing that they'd avoid it.
All these assumed thinkings, right? Like it's just,
and then I felt even more isolated because, and I didn't want to, I felt like I was always bringing it up. Yeah. And then it felt like nobody wanted to talk about it because they would all kind of like not know what to say or do. And so then I was like, maybe I should stop talking about this. And it created, like, it just added to the isolation. Yeah. So that definitely added to the mental health spiral.
Yeah. And, you know, this is an important conversation because what we're trying to teach our audience is, you know, not only to the ones who are supposed to support people like you, right? To kind of not just create that awareness, but also educate, you know. Yeah. Teach me how I can support you.
Exactly. Ask questions.
And I mean, questions,
every disabled person or every chronically ill person is going to be different. I know for me, I'm a really open person about it. I always was. Yeah. Not necessarily in the way that I felt comfortable to bring it up at the time, but if somebody had asked me, I was always very open about like what was going on and what would have helped. But like, I can't think of many instances where someone was like, tell me about this, or like, what can I do to support you, and not because they didn't care, but because they just were too scared to, like, they didn't know how to approach it or what to say, and so it just kind of never happened. And then I ended up, like, those bonds kind of slowly faded because they were living their life, and all of a sudden I wasn't present for it. I couldn't go do the things with them.
So how do we break that barrier?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
I wish I had a perfect, like, I'm still figuring it out. I'm 3 years into this now, and I'm still just figuring it out. But I think for me, like, having people reach out and be like, what's going on with your health? Like, tell me about it. Like, I personally, and like, this might not be the same for everyone with chronic illness, but like, I would have loved to talk about it. Yeah. And like, I remember there was, a post on social media that was done by another chronic illness human. And it was, the gist of it was basically like, you can't fix what I'm going through. Yes. What I'm going through is awful, and there's no way to put like a positive spin on it. Right. It is what it is. It's reality. Yeah. But what you can do is sit in it with me. You can sit here. You
can be there.
In the garbage. And just like make sure that I'm not alone in this. Yes. And that was kind of like, for me, I saw that and was like really overwhelmed because I was like, that's it. I think when people do bring it up, they want to fix it. Yep. And then they're frustrated when they can't. And I'm like, if you could fix this, I would have fixed this by now.
As the listener, that has always been my challenge in this world. Because even on social media, if I throw in, I got this going on and blah, 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 then I get all these, private messages, phone calls. I'm like, well, did you do this? Oh, maybe you should have done this and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, that's not what I need from you. Mm-hmm. This is how I want to be supported. Okay. Yeah. Can you just let me vent?
Yeah.
Right. Can I just talk about what's going on? Because sometimes I find that the solution comes to me just by talking.
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
But you're right. And being there is so, oh my God, I advocate for that. That's the biggest thing.
This is your bread and butter.
This is my wheelhouse, and people don't understand. So I can talk till the cows come home about this, and I'm glad you see it. You're experiencing it now through this. But yeah, huge aspect. So remember that, everybody.
Yeah. I think it's human nature that we want to fix problems. Yeah. And it makes us deeply uncomfortable when we can't.
Yep.
And I think that we tend to then avoid problems we can't fix. Yeah. Like, we're just like, well, if I can't fix it, then I just...
Just gonna leave.
I'm just gonna not deal with it, which sucks when it comes to chronic illness because it's not a fixable problem. Yeah. But, like, I, as the chronically ill person, am stuck in this. Yeah. I can't leave. Yeah. This is my world, and I can't walk away because I can't fix it. And so having someone be there and having a support system just be like, well, if you can't walk away, then I won't either. Yes. Like, I'll just sit here in it with you. Yes. Is, like, probably the most beneficial thing that people can do. Yeah.
Well, back to that is just what you were talking. I was thinking about, my grandma had passed last year, and my mom was usually stoic. She's Filipino, right? So she's the type of person doesn't usually show her feelings, but she was going through this process that she just was already starting to grieve, and my grandma hasn't passed yet. And I remember her sitting on the just on the couch and crying, which I rarely see her do, right? Okay. So my natural instinct as a listener, I approached her and I said, what can I do to support you? And that was huge.
What a great response.
Right? What can I do to support you? And she says, no, there's nothing right now. And then she just opened up. She says, she's been with me for so many years and just through that, I was able to support her. Right. Yeah. And so I guess that is really one of the ways we can break that barrier.
You just gave her a space to be.
Yeah. Yeah. And naturally, because now I'm trained in it, that's what I naturally do. And then when I don't receive it from others, I'm just like, I wish you could come to my listening workshop so you can learn how, to support people.
Right. And as someone who knows that that's the type of support I need, I'm still terrible at it.
Yes, we are all guilty.
I'm like, just let me fix the problem.
Yeah.
Like, I'm still.
Well, you know what I do now in those instances, and people have asked me through my training, is like, well, so what do we do? Yeah. Right? And it's like, well, what would you like me to do? Would you like me to just be present, or would you like me to give you some advice? Mm-hmm. And that then gives you the control of how you want to be supported, right? So
I love the how can I help you right now? Yeah. Like what is it that you need
what do you need from me? Yeah.
Because everyone needs something different. Like everyone processes differently, and so like there's no clear cut. This is how you react to all situations.
Yeah. But if you approach right away, like I think this is what you should be doing.
Yeah. Then
it's like, okay, thank you. I know your intention. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you, but.
You'll see all the chronic illness people online being like, stop telling me to do yoga. Like, I know it's well-intentioned, but it's not helpful.
Right? Oh, my gosh. I was at my doctor's yesterday, too, and she was kind of throwing some ideas. I'm like, that doesn't work, I know. And it's like, now I'm getting a little bit annoyed, but then it's like, okay, let's try something else. What do you know of me? She asked me questions, and then she was able to finally find the right solution for me, right? So let me talk first, and then we can kind of, but don't throw in those things right away. That's the big thing for me. Oh, man, I get turned off by now.
There's like specific things that I know now are like triggers for me that people will say in the best possible way. And I just like, I'm like, and I'm like, I know that you mean that well, so I'm just... But like, for example, I'll have people, and it's like totally not their fault, but like I have people say, I hope you feel better soon or get well soon.
Yes.
And they're completely, and I'm like, oh, I know you mean that in the best. Yeah. But like, as someone with chronic illness who's had to go through quite a literal grieving process of I will never be healed. There's no cure or like magic fix to this. Like I will spend the rest of my life having chronic illness to varying degrees. Like I hope that I can manage symptoms better and right? Like there's definitely like a large area of like where my symptoms may be. Right. But like I will always have chronic illness. Yeah. And so people with the best intentions being like, get better soon or like hope you feel better. Like, I'm not gonna get better.
And that's the thing is like, and we go back to those who are scared of saying the wrong things. Like, where's that middle ground, right?
See, but I'd rather you say that to me as long as you're okay with me communicating. Like,
right, that's a good point.
Right, like you can't say the wrong thing to me as long as you're open to understanding why that wasn't the most helpful thing you could have said.
Hang on.
Right, like I'm never gonna be like, oh, how dare you say get better soon. But I might say, hey, like I really appreciate that that's coming from a good place. Yeah. Do you mind if I explain why that's maybe not the most helpful thing that you could say to me in this like situation? Yeah. And then like people who are open to that feedback and want to learn and are curious, I'm like, great, like you don't have to be scared of saying the wrong thing. Yeah. I'd rather you say the wrong thing than not say anything. Yeah. Because then we have this weird like avoidant situation where you don't want to address that I'm sick and I feel isolated.
And then that disconnection gets further and further, like, and
that's what creates the mental health issues. Yeah, because all of a sudden I'm like, not only am I sick, but I'm sick and alone. Yeah. Which is exponentially worse than just being sick.
Right. Holy jeez, woman. Oh my gosh. That's just, I can't even imagine. I'm so glad to hear that you're getting on the up there. And so do you have anything else you want to add in terms of, since we're talking about mental health, what do you want to see moving forward, just with that, especially in mental health, right?
Our supports are non-existent, to put it lightly. Yeah. And I personally, for me, I found that the kind of, our publicly funded mental health supports are rough. And the ones that we do have, there's nothing really specifically for people with invisible disabilities or chronic illness, which is like a very specific niche of people who end up with mental health issues. Yeah. And I think like, as someone who like, I've had depression and anxiety my whole life, at different times, not always like constant, but I've had mild to moderate depression and anxiety on and off. And so I've had a lot of access to like mental health supports in my life and found a lot of them great. Something shifted when my mental health was because of my physical health. Wow. It became the tools that like CBD and like or CBT and like psychotherapy didn't work the same.
Oh, it's not interesting.
Yeah. I think something to do with my mental health problems coming from a different root cause meant that the treatment needed to be different. And we don't really have supports for that. So like even like the group therapies that we offer or all of the psychotherapy I found was really just wired for, it would have worked really well for me as an able-bodied person with depression and anxiety. Yeah. But it didn't work for me as a disabled person with depression and anxiety. And I think part of that, I'm still trying to figure out how to word it and how to say it. And but like I had social anxiety beforehand. Yeah. I could find if I was stressing about, oh my gosh, I said the wrong thing. I'm so stressed about that. There was a way to talk myself out of it and being like, is this really important? Do I need to sit here and like, maybe it's being present, maybe it's distraction, whatever coping mechanism I found. But it was like, this isn't, not that the feeling that I'm feeling isn't real, but the danger my nervous system is feeling is not real. Yes. Like I am not like this panic of like, oh my gosh, this person hates me. Yeah. My nervous system was thinking you're in danger. And I'm like, no, I'm not. Versus as a disabled person, my anxiety was coming from things that my nervous system was in danger. They were real. Yeah. So like distraction from my excruciating pain. Yeah. Didn't work. Or like if I just be present and like talk myself out of the anxiety that I have about I'm gonna get like I developed really bad anxiety about like my future. Yeah. Because so I'm lucky now that I've kind of plateaued. I'm not getting sicker anymore. I'm kind of just like at a baseline. The first like 2.5 years I was getting progressively sicker. So every month I'd end up with a new symptom or a more severe version of a symptom. And so I developed this like really severe anxiety of, God, what are the next 6 years of my life going to look like? Because I'm just getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And so trying to talk myself out of being anxious about, am I going to be able to walk down a flight of stairs next year?
Yeah.
I couldn't, it wasn't a perceived danger. It was a real danger that was real to my nervous system. Yeah. So I found that like the psychotherapy and all of those tools that they teach you didn't really apply anymore. They all of a sudden didn't feel, and like I am a champion of psychotherapy and CBT, and I think it's wonderful and everyone should be in therapy, and but like it didn't fit anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, that's a takeaway, is like our supports aren't great for people who are dealing with mental health because of physical health.
Yes.
It looks different, and I think the supports need to look different to match that.
Yeah. Well, that's good. And I know you're so intelligent. You've done your research in this. So how do we see that going forward? Like, what do you want to see?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love, so like obviously AHS here in Alberta, we have our funded, we have quite a few funded group psychotherapy and CBT programs. And I've looked for years. There's nothing that is specifically for people with physical illness. And I think like it's hard to sit in a room of people who don't, like, the point of group therapy is to sit in a room of people who understand what you're going through.
Yes, yeah.
And it doesn't, and I've done some of these group therapies, and like, so I've experienced them. It doesn't feel like that when they are people with mental health struggles that aren't coming from physical health.
Right.
Of course, it's still anxiety. It's still, so there's still some relatability. But I can imagine that it would be incredibly beneficial to sit in a room full of people who I feel like really get it.
Yeah.
Like and so for context, my sister actually got the same brain injury as me 5 years earlier.
Oh my goodness.
So I have a really unique perspective.
Yeah.
Because I was the able-bodied person watching her go through it, and I did not understand. And now knowing now I feel it, and I know what she went through.
Yeah.
There's nothing she could have said that would have made me be able to understand what was going on. Like, there's nothing she could have said.
Yeah.
So, like, being able to sit in a room full of other people who are also chronically ill or who have physical stuff going on in their body, who I know get it, would massively impact being able to work through stuff. Yeah. And, like, feel seen in a space. Yeah. Because, I'm like, there's just, as an able-bodied person, like, there's just no realm to be able to fully comprehend it. Wow. So I'm lucky in a weird way that I get that unique perspective of like, I was the able-bodied person watching someone I loved go through it. Yeah. And now I'm disabled and know exactly what they were going through. And I'm like, there's just no way to explain it or understand it without experiencing it.
That's so interesting. Because, I talk about, especially with my podcast being named Happily Ever Understood, just keeping that open mind. So, in this situation that you're in and your sister was in, do you feel that other people will understand you better? I mean, unfortunately, like if they have to be in that kind of position, or like, what is it? Like the education, you know?
I mean, I think I've gotten to a point where no able-bodied person will ever fully understand what it's like to be chronically ill or have an invisible disability or any disability. Right. And I don't wish that on them.
Yes,
I don't want them
That's
to.
a good point, yes.
But I think being aware, I think the best that we can hope for is like, be aware that you can't possibly imagine what it's like. Yeah. And so listen to us when we tell you what it's like and what we need and what supports, like listen and know that this may not make sense to me, but I know that I don't understand what's going on in your body. Yeah. Right? So like when I'm having I remember her trying to describe symptoms to me, and like I love my sister dearly, and I remember thinking in the back of my head, are you making this up? Yeah. Because I didn't understand it. Yeah. Because like some of the symptoms, we kind of forget that, like, especially brain injuries, but I think this goes for most chronic illnesses, like the brain controls your whole body. So like it'd be like, she'd be having the craziest symptoms that made no sense to me with a brain injury. And I was like, this almost sounds made up. Yeah. And it's because it is. It's so like, it sounds made up. Like it's so crazy the symptoms you get that it sounds... Wow. And I'm like, I don't know why my body is doing this, but it's doing this. So I think you're never going to be able to understand it, but like, no matter how insane it sounds, believe us. Like this is, I don't know why my leg is cramping right now, even though it's like, I don't know what's... So, like, I ended up with dysautonomia from my brain injury.
Oh, okay.
Which is a dysfunction of the autonomic nervous system. So, like, I have heart palpitations now, or my blood pressure drops every time I stand up and I almost pass out. But, like, that, so many weird random symptoms that it sounds made up.
Yeah, especially when you got that many, right?
Yeah, and chronic illnesses are like stamps, you collect them. So
yeah, jeez, woman.
You kind of just...
Oh, so glad you're laughing about it. Yeah. Jeez.
You have to. I think that was, you know, that was another piece for me is like, I'm someone who makes jokes about stuff, especially the uncomfortable stuff. It's just like how I function. I've always been like that. Yeah. And I noticed that when I make jokes about my disability in a room full of able-bodied people, everyone is like, are we allowed to laugh? Do we not? I'm like, if I'm making a joke about it, laugh. Like, yes, like, it's funny. It's okay. I'm like, I notice people are always like, what do I do? Like, people look so uncomfortable. And I'm like, I wouldn't be making a joke about it if you weren't allowed to laugh. It's okay.
Oh my gosh. So, you know, what do you see for the future? Like, I really hope your advocacy goes as far as it should, you know, I hope so. And I hope I can help you with my event this, you know, and and whatever else I can do to, you know, connect you with people. You know, so what do you see long term for Ocean here?
I have no idea, honestly. I think right now I'm really focusing on authenticity. I think that was one of the things my mental health took away from me in the midst of it was like trying so hard to not be a burden and to not be the sick girl who always talked about how she was sick, and that I kind of lost my authenticity in being who I am. And so that's kind of my focus, and then just trusting the universe that like we'll get wherever we're supposed to be, but like just focusing on like being as authentic as I can possibly be, and like open and honest about like what happened in the situation and what it's like to have chronic illness, and that's kind of, I'm just like living in that world, and I have no idea what next month or the next week or brings. Like, I'm
step by step.
I'm still dealing with a lot with my health. It's not unfortunately magically solved. But I'm just trying to focus on like getting through it and one day at a time. I will the one thing that made the most difference to my mental health, and it's unfortunately not accessible to everyone because it's not cheap, but I don't know if you've ever heard of Tony Robbins. Yeah,
of course I have.
Yeah, I hadn't before I did the seminar. So in, I think it was March now, I did a Tony Robbins seminar, and that was the turning point. That was huge impact. So he does a free 3-day thing once a year, and I believe it's called Time to Rise Summit.
I think and
anyone listening who, like, not even just chronically ill people, but anyone struggling with mental health or lack of direction or anything, go do this Time to Rise Summit. It's free. It's on YouTube.
Good for you.
It's worth it. So I did that, and then I actually had someone offer to pay for a seminar ticket for me.
Wow.
So I got really lucky. It's not an option for everyone, unfortunately, but I took it. I took advantage of it, especially because it was such an incredible opportunity, and I really took advantage of it and like played full out and really committed, and that was the turning point in my mental health of being like, okay, I'm gonna figure this out. Like, I don't have any more answers than I had before. I still have health problems. I'm still trying to work through them, but my mindset shifted, and so that's where I'm at right now, where I'm just like, you're like, what's your plan? I'm like, I have no idea. But like, just trying to be more authentic and focus on what I can focus on, and we'll figure out what happens from there.
Well, that's good. Well, so I'm going to ask you a question before we close. Yeah. Absolutely. And that is, and this can be whatever, you know, your whole entire life. What matters to you the most?
I think right now, visibility. Visibility for, specifically for me, chronic illness and invisible disability. Invisible disability. There's a lot of like misconceptions in the general public and with able-bodied people, and I think it's way more harmful than people realize. And so right now my focus is just like having able-bodied people understand a little bit more of what goes on in this world of like chronic illness.
Wonderful. Thanks, you, Ocean.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, that was a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. So,
awesome.
Thank you.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yes, absolutely.
It was nice to chat.